Thank you very much for that. I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to a conference that's devoted to winning trust. Aside from its people, New Zealand's most valuable asset is its reputation. And this is a reputation for integrity and transparency. What I want to explore with you today is that with Ian having laid down the gauntlet for $6 billion, I want to explore with you a way in which winning trust is actually going to help you achieve that, and also by applying the New Zealand story. So you'll be aware of the TICPI, the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. And all of you, when you came into the room, have been handed a map showing New Zealand's position on it. The perception that's measured is actually measured internationally. This is not something which any of us have made up in New Zealand and are promoting. This is how the world sees New Zealand. It's very important to recognize that this is something that we haven't had to promote actively. This is what people really believe about us. And the other thing is that while it's been called a perceptions index for many years, it's moved in the recent years from being a perception-based index to being an evidence-based one. And if you go, for example, onto the World Justice Project website, you'll be able to see some of the things in which we're measured and compared. Now, regrettably, while we have been number one for more years than any other country in the world, we are currently in second place behind Denmark. And the World Justice Project profiles give you some indicators as to why that might be the case. And they also give, I think, some evidence as to why we might be even further down the rankings when the index is next published in January 2016. Now, this needn't be the case for us. We can actually do better and stay at the top of the index, but we have to become less complacent. An internal survey that we did called the New Zealand, we called it Integrity Plus, the New Zealand 2013 National Integrity Systems Assessment. And sorry for the long-winded terminology, but this is based on international wording. This internal assessment that we did of all the New Zealand sectors, obviously the government, judiciary, and legislative and executive, but also the commercial sector, across all those sectors, we found New Zealand did score really well. But the problem we've got is that reputation is extremely fragile, and most people are complacent about our reputation. And we need to change that. Because bribery and corruption have corrosive effects, and they can make quite a difference, not just to our reputation, but also to the quality of the business that we actually do. But what we can do is New Zealand has the ability to use its internal mechanisms to prevent corruption, and it's much cheaper to prevent corruption than it is to build major institutions designed to enforce corruption. And so the sooner we start taking this on board and doing it, the better off our reputation will remain, and the better off your industry will be. So you are already playing a very vital role in this through your mission to be trusted, and through the other things that your industry is doing, as was mentioned by Grant. Those things all will make a difference and contribute to New Zealand continuing to have this good reputation. So as part of the unique yellow zone countries, New Zealand's in a position then to provide both opportunities internally, but also to provide leadership internationally. And this leadership internationally is important because that's where you're going to want to be. You want to be selling your product, not just to New Zealanders, obviously, but you want to be selling it as broadly and into as many markets as you can. And it's our reputation internationally that provides that opportunity. Everyone in New Zealand, of course, benefits from a trusted public sector. It's something which we can on a daily basis. We don't face the kind of cost structures that other countries do. In countries like Malaysia, many African nations, it's like an additional tax corruption, because every day when people go to work, they're paying a facilitation payment. I don't think we recognize just how different a situation we have. Howard Broad gave me a ride home the other day. He's a police commissioner, was a former police commissioner. He said to me, you know, Suzanne, in my whole life in the police force, I never once was offered a bribe. There are hardly any countries in the world, I mean, even Australia, which ranks 11th, as you see, can't say that in the certainty that we can say in New Zealand. And so I think we've got to start being proud of this. We need to then use this to grow our customer base, and from that we can create a positive spiral of economic growth. There are essentially many unrealized benefits from this reputation, and I've narrowed them down to 7 key ones. The most important one is reputation and brand. All of the evidence now from Harvard, MIT, Stanford, the boot camp, tells us that the most important contributor to anyone's bottom line is reputation. In a global economy, when you're exporting, reputation is all. You may think it's your balance sheet, you may think it's your cash. Sorry guys, that's not what's coming through from the surveys that are being done now. So it's time you actually thought about how is that reputation going to contribute to my bottom line. And the New Zealand story is a big help in this because, amongst other things, it provides evidence about the value of reputation and where it comes from. But it also provides you with go-to-market stories that you can use with your customers, with your other stakeholders, with your supply chains, and so on. There is domestic corruption in New Zealand, and we need to realize that we can't be blasé about that. So what can you do to prevent that corruption? Well, it comes down to 7 things, and those 7 things are quite straightforward. I won't actually read them all out to you, but those 7 things you can all be doing and you can build into your regular routines now with the help of your trusted advisors. But if we look at the unrealized benefits, then we have the reputation and brand, and thinking about that, are your customers and suppliers being told on a regular basis about your reputation and brand and how important it is to you, both your sustainability and to the quality of what they get from you? And the New Zealand story helps with that. And as you see, the leading line in the New Zealand story is about New Zealand's integrity, followed very importantly by kaitiaki, by our resourcefulness, by the fact that we have open spaces, that we have open hearts and open minds. And this is not just words, but all of these words carry with them quite a strong message, which has been found as an engagement message for our international partners, our customers, our suppliers, and so on. And here's some more of the evidence about the strength of New Zealand's reputation. And again, I'm not going to read it all out to you, but as you can see, we've got a strong reputation, again reinforced by other measures of reputation, and we're seen as a very peaceful place to be. And most importantly there, from my point of view, is we're #1 in transparency. And I think we've got to continue to be at that position if at all possible, because it's one thing that we can directly control. So as well as reputation, the other 6 benefits from transparency are that, first of all, you have a lower cost of doing business. Again, I've explained about the cost of doing business in other places. Have you thought about what competitive advantage that gives you? And have you thought about building that competitive advantage in a much stronger way than you might at the moment? But at the same time, when you think about going to market in countries where there is high corruption, think again if you were thinking that you would have to pay bribes and facilitation payments. The countries that are in the red zone don't want to be there. They want to be like us. They want exemplars who are in those markets that they can point to, who they can say are doing business here, and they're not paying bribes and facilitation payments. And that will save you money too. Again, the average cost of facilitation payments and bribes in the OECD is thought to be about 22%, and in Asian economies, somewhere in the order of 35%. Lower cost of capital. This is a hard one here because of the ownership of our banks, but I think we need to, at some time, address it. Why is there such a gap between our deposit rates and our borrowing rates? I think that gap should be narrowed. It's one of the largest in the OECD, and given all the other things about our economy, I think it should be lower. There's a lower cost of easier market access. We know the one example I like to quote is Assure Quality, which is in China and is doing all of the quality assurance for dairy for COFCO, which is the biggest food conglomerate in the world. American companies would kill for that kind of market access, but New Zealand companies do have it. Also, higher rate of return on investment. If you talk to Adrian Orr at the New Zealand Super Fund, if you look at yourself at investments, everyone these days wants to partner with ethical organizations. And as a result of partnering with ethical organizations, it means that you end up getting a higher return on shareholder investment. And this isn't just true if your equity investor isn't listed on the stock exchange. It's true of all partnerships that you put together. The other two, I think, are very important to us as New Zealanders. Staff prefer to work for ethical companies, and we know this, all the surveys that get done internationally. It's a way to attract back some of our best New Zealanders back here to work in this industry. And ethical organizations, of course, have more customer support. So trust is an economic as well as an ethical, constitutional, and social value, and it's worth now thinking about building on that. Here is the opportunity. Your sustainable fishing is beneficial in the New Zealand market because we have this 9th largest coastline in the world and the 7th largest economic zone. But don't forget that when you put all the Pacific Island countries together, the economic zones make it bigger than any other continent in the world. So there is resource there, and those Pacific Island nations are going to want to work with you because they too want to increase their overall returns in time and quickly if possible. The seafood industry then, I think, is well aligned to be part of the Trusted Team New Zealand. So this is a great opportunity to think about collaboration and the value of learning from each other about how that collaboration can work best, and learning how you can build in those 7 advantages that are currently largely unharvested into your bottom line. This is the sort of thing where you can be a leader because you can show that to other industries in New Zealand at the same time. In this way, we move from being a country where we've had finite resources, where capital has been tough to come by and costly. We move into a situation where we have access to capital in a way that is infinite potential for us. And this is why you can become a $6 billion industry. And this is why it's possible to move us from the situation that has been so prevalent over the past many years in New Zealand to a place where, instead of a negative spiral where it's always about constraint, we can move into a positive spiral where it's about growth. And you can be the ones. Thank you.